All right. Now we're working.
All right. Now we're on hot mic.
Dude, there's always something wrong with your mic, I swear.
Yeah.
And it's always your fault, too.
Oh, this one's my fault.
Stage crew.
Boo.
Boo. Booing. Oh, that's the best.
Repping the 3 o'clock high.
Oh, yeah. You saw that, huh? Buddy Ravel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, I've been on a kick with getting just like 80 shirts. When somebody recognizes it, though, I feel like I don't know if I feel super cool. I kind of feel like let down almost. Like so I have this one that says Cohagen Air. Do you know where that's from?
No.
Total Recall.
Oh.
So the bad guy in it, his name is Cohagen. And he's like, they're on Mars, you know. That movie holds up, by the way.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, dude,
in a long time.
I mean, there's a few that are garbage, you know. But I was I was watching. There's a few that are hold up pretty good. And Total Recall is one of them. But they're on Mars, and like, of course, it's like a artificial atmosphere that they're all living in or whatever. And this guy, the Cohagen guy, he keeps air from these people, and they die.
Cohagen Air.
So Cohagen Air. And I was walking around Disneyland with that thing on, and of course nobody knows that. And then this dude who's a cast member at Disneyland, because that's what they call their janitors too, is cast members. He's like, he points at it. He's one of the dudes that directs people in the Star Wars land where to go.
Yeah.
And he's all Total Recall, and he's bald and clearly overweight, and I'm just like, yeah, sweet, bro. Gave him nuts. I'm like, God, I'm a nerd, dude. It's like I felt bad about myself for liking that show.
It's like an indictment on you because someone else recognizes a movie.
Yeah, but I'm like waiting.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for it to happen at the same time. I'm like, yeah, somebody better recognize this.
Well, Buddy Ravel, that's really obscure. I don't know how many people would know that unless you went to Ogden High.
Yeah.
How many people know that movie?
I don't know how. Yeah.
How well known is 3 o'clock high? To us, it's well known.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how well known 3 o'clock high is. And I've only ever seen that guy in one other movie. He was the bad guy in Kindergarten Cop.
Was he?
Buddy Ravel, bro. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You didn't know that?
I don't think I connected it. Well, what was the Melissa Joan Hart movie when we were there? Closer.
Drive Me Crazy.
Drive Me Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. She was
was 3 o'clock high bigger than Drive Me Crazy?
I think so. Because Drive Me Crazy was like nothing. I mean, there was, and 3 o'clock, I don't know. Well,
I've never heard anybody talk about it.
So it came out in 1987. So why would we have heard anybody talk about it? We were 5.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Fair enough.
So that's, I don't know. I love that movie. There's some really cool parts in that movie.
Dude, they paid me $50 to use my locker.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, in Drive Me Crazy?
Yeah, I had to clear out my locker for a couple days.
I remember
50 bones for a 17-year-old.
I got paid extra money for being an extra in Drive Me Crazy. And one thing about Melissa Joan Hart, shout out to Melissa Joan Hart. We were playing me and Ed, we were playing Twisted Metal on, this is PS1.
Yeah.
Back in the
Remember
day.
that game.
And she sat down and she had like a little mini speaker. And she was playing 9 Inch Nails. I was like, oh, hey, all right, you got some taste, girl.
Yeah.
And she was like watching us play Twisted Metal, and she's like,
oh, really?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We were like all intimidated.
Yeah, like, I hope she sees how good I play this game.
Yeah, you think she likes me?
She liked me, yeah.
Oh, that's so hilarious. Yeah, anytime we watch that, it's funny because there's a particular basketball player that it's like his arch nemesis, and Ed's last year that they were playing their championship game, they lost, by the way. The player just made some really boneheaded moves, and to this day, if I just say his name, dude, Ed,
it comes unglued.
Yeah. He instantly loses his mind. But yeah, I have one that I have not had anybody know what it was. So it says Utah, get me 2. And do you know where that's from?
No.
So it's from Point Break, the best Patrick Swayze movie of all time. Yeah. And there's a funny part in there where Gary Busey, crazy ass, is explaining to Johnny Utah about these Subway sandwiches or something, these meatball sandwiches. And he's like, get me 2. And then he gets out of his car. He's like, Utah, get me 2. First person recognizes that will be a nerd bomber.
I was going to say that's very obscure.
Yeah, dude, you know what? Speaking of like, they remade Point Break. Awful. Should have never done that. That was a horrible decision.
Total Recall.
But you know what I know. Awful. And RoboCop. Dude, go, when you get done with this, and anybody listening to this, just Google or watch on YouTube. Look up the RoboCop shooting scene, like where he gets
the
shot.
New one?
No.
Oh.
The old one. The guy
When he gets wasted at first of it,
dude. He gets shot 7,000 times, and he's like,
like he's like reacting to the bullets like 3,000 bullets deep.
Dude, he's like all kinds of things, and then finally they shoot him in the head, and I was like, good. It's just 80s movies were so cool, dude.
Yeah.
They were the best.
Unintentionally cheesy, but in hindsight, that the nostalgia of the how awful some of the action scenes were. I don't know, I like it.
But dude, I'm looking forward to the new one. So they're you know what movie they're remaking? Roadhouse.
Beautiful.
And you know who's the Patrick Swayze character is
probably not having him come back to do it, are they?
R.I.P.
Yeah.
So he's
soon? No.
He's played by Jake Gyllenhaal, and then you know that Sam Elliott, the guy
the mustache dude,
who's been old in every movie he's ever been in.
Yeah,
like even in that movie when he was young, he was old.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
Dude. Yeah. That's going to be pretty sweet. Yeah.
Wonder if Connor can act. Guess we'll see.
Oh, breaking news on that movie front, huh? Which is good segue into our topic for today. We got some news articles. So
that's right. Guerrilla social work.
There
news.
you go. GSW news. We should pat.
Da-da-da. Da-da-da. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, we need that news sound.
Yeah. Yes. Dude, so basically in these episodes, Jeff and I each pick a news article that we find provocative or something that thought-provoking, whatever. And we read it to you and then we discuss it and then we leave that for you guys to take a look at. So What do you got for us today, man?
I have Fox 13 investigates. Utah allowed 14 sex offenders.
Local
news. Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look here. All right.
So Utah allowed 14 sex offenders to live together despite its own rules. So let me just take those first 4 paragraphs and we'll jump into it.
Okay, cool.
So Salt Lake City, a Fox 13 news investigation has revealed how the Utah Department of Corrections makes exceptions to its own rules, allowing clusters of sex offenders to live together throughout the state. Dan Blanchard, the director of AP&P, said his office started receiving complaints in spring about a house on Catherine Street in Rose Park. AP&P managed the sex offender registry and supervises most offenders after they leave prison. Neighbors said they decided to stay away from the cute house with the pink butterfly once they learned there were 14 sex offenders registered to the address, a single-family residence. I make sure that my windows and doors are locked every single night, said a neighbor. If your child were walking home from school in front of that house, how would that make you feel? Probably pretty angry.
Let me see here. I want to see if we got a shot of this.
The cute house with the butterfly?
Yeah, this picture. Oh, come on. Danny, you're okay. Do I really have to? I just want to see a picture. Do I have to?
You got to watch.
Okay. Let's just watch this.
5 more seconds of an ad.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Okay, I got it. Utah's Weather Authority. No. Go back to the beginning.
I don't think we're gonna get it.
I'll scrub. I guess there's the house.
Blowing up those dudes' spot on the registry.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go. Okay. There's the pink butterfly right there.
Cute house. I can't describe a house as cute, but all right.
That looks like a house for sure. Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to see what a cute house looks like.
Yeah. Go to the scroll down. The person that commented, I think, kind of set the tone for if your child were walking home from school in front of that house, how would that make you feel? Probably pretty angry. And so the article goes on to talk about kind of the saturation rule, and it references something in there that I remember differently.
Well, can you? So for listeners who don't know, who might be in, and this is who might be in another state or even another country. The saturation rule. Can you explain that a little bit? What that is?
Yeah. Well, so let's see. How do we start? The idea is that you don't want too many felons living in the same place. The idea being that an increased number of felons living in the same residence increases risk, and this would probably be best understood with like a dope house. If you have 4 guys that have been historically in trouble for drug use and, they're setting up shop together. I think the idea is that they're going to be at increased risk to get back into their old ways if, these highly criminal dudes are living together. And
so it's that old, what is it, proverb or idiom?
Birds of a feather?
Probably do a lot of crack.
Yeah, birds of a feather do a lot of crack. Yeah,
but
I think that's how it goes.
And just to clarify, is it a saturation? Like it's not a law, is it, that they can't live there, or is this a rule that's kind of created by APMP?
I don't know. It's not a law. And that's the thing is that the news article somewhere in here, maybe we can read through it. It references the felon to felon contact thing as being a rule. And I don't think that that's a rule anymore, but the saturation thing, APMP can decide whether they enforce it or not. Okay. It's the same thing. So, my understanding of it is that the idea is that no more than 3 people are supposed to live in a house that have a felony charge. And I mean, 14 dudes living in a house, that's like a different set of problems, but this does technically violate the saturation rule.
I know. Well, number one, 14, just the sheer number. Like when you say cute, I mean, what about just 14 non-felons living in a house? Like that would be.
When I was in college, I lived in a house with 5 other guys, and it was horrific.
Yeah, I lived in a house with 5 other guys. So there were 6 of us, and we were in a 4-bedroom place, and it was awful.
Yeah.
It was the worst setup of all time. Maybe so 14.
Yeah.
I mean, and that did not look like a 14-person house.
It must be like a duplex. I don't know, because like zoning,
a quadruplex.
Yeah, a quadruplex. Yeah, something like that. But so this article makes reference to the saturation rule, and then it says that APMP can violate its own rule, and then it also mentions that it says with a little more authority that APMP limits felons from being able to associate with one another, and I thought that got lifted.
Yeah, I was always under the impression that that was years ago.
Years ago.
Yeah. You were messing with my noise here. Right. Yeah, years ago. That APMP, it used to be that you had to request permission for your, like us, we have clients that naturally just develop a friendship while they're in group and they want to be able to hang out. And we used to have to ask for permission.
Right.
But I remember explicitly that it was 2 or 3 years ago at least that they said, no, they no longer have to get permission from us to do this.
So I'm not going crazy. That was my memory.
Right.
Too.
Right. So, and I rarely had the time that was turned down either. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think the spirit of it sounds okay. I mean, we know that
the spirit of the saturation rule.
Yeah, I mean, so
or felon to felon contact, both.
Yeah. Because I mean, so anybody who does work with people that are involved in the criminal justice system who do any form of risk assessment know that those people that you choose to hang around with, what they usually call criminal associates, increase the likelihood of recidivism. Mm-hmm. So if you're spending time with people who are reinforcing antisocial attitudes or attitudes that are, support and condone criminal behavior of any kind, sex offenses included, then that's an increase. Now, I don't know. I suppose there's a counter argument to that, which, I assume we'll get to, but that's I guess the spirit of the rule, right? That's where it's coming from.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think I don't know. That's definitely the case with some types of crimes. Probably a lot of crimes that, when they're associating, the likelihood of antisocial behaviors goes up. And sex offending, I don't know, it's in most cases, it's kind of a solo project, It's the best way to describe it. But it's like of course things happen, you hear about, gang rapes or, sexual assault happening with more than one person, but that's super rare. At least, I mean, I don't know the exact numbers on it, but I think that I've come across it maybe 2 or 3 times in my career. There was a kid at the group home that we worked with that was involved in that.
Yeah. So in other words, this wasn't something that manifested as a result of antisocial pressure, like peer pressures from people who were, you were seeing other people doing this, drugs is an easy way to look at it, right? Drugs is always probably the easiest reference point. So, I see my friends using drugs and, I don't want to be left out and they don't want to hang out with people. So I just kind of gravitate towards this. And as a result of getting into this drugs, how deep I choose to get into this, there's just natural criminal behaviors that have to start stemming from this. Substance use is its own set of risk factors. But if I'm with people who, have a, F the police attitude and just kind of against pro-social conventional thinking, I'm more likely to kind of adopt those norms, right?
Right.
Whereas you're saying that sex offending usually doesn't have people that are reinforcing those thoughts and those feelings. You don't have a whole group of people saying, yeah, that's cool to do these type of activities.
Quite the opposite, right? I
mean, I guess the only exception that I would have to that I would see is on a lot of child pornography cases, but it's distance. There's a buffer because you're using a computer. Because,
what have you seen?
Well, a lot of federal assessments that I do. Most of the federal guys, because they get charged with child pornography because these images or videos are sometimes international, either on peer-to-peer networks or through like a BitTorrent account, or they're doing on message boards. Like they'll weird ways they'll have a picture of just an innocuous picture of something completely opposite of this, and within that picture they'll pick a little area in there and attach a video to it that you can't even see it, but there's like a link embedded into the picture, and they'll tell you where to find the link and click on it, like a clandestine way.
I have not heard of this.
Yeah, a clandestine way of getting those through. So this kind of requires a network of people to pull this off a lot of the times. I would assume you're in for a big surprise if you just go on Google and search child porn. Like, I don't think you're going to get where you want to go, and you'll probably just get in trouble anyway, like really fast for just, searching those things. So there's kind of an underground network that relies on people, a lot of whom are police officers, doing undercover work, trying to catch guys too. So, but that's kind of the only situation where I know that there's a lot of linkage, but they don't know each other though. It's not similar to like we're pals. But you see like reinforcing, like justifying what they're looking at, and maybe trying to, through talking it up and like saying it's not so bad, or that, professing their attraction to things and kind of having like almost like a deviant support group. Yeah. Yeah. Like they'll, so like there's a really I guess popular site that it's called Kick. I'm sure you've heard of it. And people will go on there and, essentially it's people with, I guess, what you could call out of the norm, thoughts about sex and sexuality. It's not inherently deviant in terms of like non-consensual activities or children or anything illegal. That's not what Kick is all about. However, on there, they tend to meet one another, and it's a good place to kind of screen out and find people. And they use like phrases, like little secret codes and stuff to I guess locate one another, and then they get a direct message going on, and then it's a bit of a commodity. So if I'll give you this if you give me that. So they trade a lot of that,
Right.
but definitely reinforcing. I mean, like NAMBLA is a great example. You know, that's reinforcing very deviant, you know, sexual thinking.
Right.
Although the other thing I'd say that might be an exception sometimes with sex offenders in particular is not all of them, but I don't know, and I don't know the statistics on this, but at least anecdotally, I would say most of our clients, in terms of like criminogenic risk, you know, like a huge criminal history, criminal thinking, all those things, they're kind of low risk. They're not really good criminals per se. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just don't. And now, and you
Right.
could make an argument to say a lot of their criminal thinking came from their period of incarceration. I'm not saying don't incarcerate them. I'm just saying that when you go to prison, you have to adopt prison thinking to get by, you know, and that's a lot of criminal thinking, unfortunately. And then you come back out into the community. But I think most of them kind of have a low risk profile when it comes to just straight criminogenic risk. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, definitely.
So that's where I don't know how well that rule applies.
Right. And maybe that brings up why that. So this article, I mean, I kind of skimmed through it, but it looked, the journalist appears to be kind of making the point that AP&P is maybe being inconsistent on the way that it decides what rules they do or don't enforce. And the way I'm looking at it is that's how it should be. The things that there shouldn't necessarily be just stark black-white decision-making. Things should be based on risk and variables and a multitude of factors. And like I mean, 14 is a lot of people, but I mean, it depends on who are these 14 people, what's their history, what's their mindset, have they been through treatment? You know,
I would want to know the circumstances too.
Yeah, and
you know what I mean?
Well, it references the housing crisis as being the big reason.
Let's take a look at this here.
And look at like the Good Landlord Act funnels them into these neighborhoods. Yeah.
So according to AP&P, sex offenders on parole are not allowed to associate with other felons, which means they should not have 13 felon roommates unless they get permission from that's what you were talking about, unless they get their parole agent for good behavior. In this case, AP&P made 14 individual exceptions. Man, what way to put AP&P on blast.
They kind of did throughout the article.
These are reviewed by agents, maybe multiple agents reviewing them, Blanchard said. We trust that our field team, they're managing those appropriately. Fox 13 News asked how often AP&P is making exceptions on its own rules. It's a case by case, and there are times when we decline those requests, Blanchard responded. There's not necessarily a box that's checked that says this one is denied or this one is approved. But as a supervisor, you have no way of knowing whether your agents are approving these in 90% of cases, 10% of cases. Asked Fox 13 News investigator reporter Adam Herberts.
I mean, maybe it would be good if there was like a way to track what is or isn't happening, you know, because I don't think the AP&P is doing that. But what they're doing there is they're allowing some discretion of the field agents that know the offender best.
Yeah.
And
well, would you want that though?
Yes.
Yeah.
The news article is kind of saying like, which one is it? And, you know, at least that's sort of the way I took it. Like, you know, making rules convenient. And look, like I get it. I mean, that's a lot of people with a felony person crime living in the same house. I mean, it is weird. Like, but, I'm reading C.Y. Roby's quote here. It says, according to Dr. C.Y. Roby, the psychologist who helped develop Utah's sex offender rehabilitation program, the idea of them living together is frowned upon, but he understands the housing crisis makes things difficult. And I think that is worth noting in that, I mean, finding housing is tough for anybody.
Well, wouldn't you agree that they were like that's even more difficult for.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, so
yeah, it's harder for sex offenders, and there's the Good Landlord Act and all these different things that funnel them into very specific locations. They can only live so many places.
Right. I mean, to me, it seems like sex offenders were in a housing crisis before there was a housing crisis.
Yeah.
Because, and the Good Landlord Act, which I think no longer is in place, or at least.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think that's gone away. it was a weird, and I think that was only related to Weber County too. And
okay.
Yeah. And Weber Morgan County. And basically what it was, you as a landlord would get some sort of, I think it was a tax incentive, and I could be wrong, so I apologize if I am, but you got some sort of tax incentive, tax break if you did not rent to felons, right? Now, the problem with that is that limited, where clients could live. And you know this, basically it relegated them to like slumlords, right? And they would, and you would think it'd be cheaper for them, which was not true. So these, slumlords recognized also, well, what are your options?
Where are you going to go?
Right. So they would charge high-end rates, for them, and our clients would be like, holy cow, what am I supposed to do? And those type of barriers, and again, I recognize it when people say they deserve that. Okay, I'm not, you got to have an opinion on this. However, they're back in the community, and we're this period of time that they are in the community before they violate and go back to prison. The more difficult that we make it, the more likely they're going to revert back to previous coping methods, and those are the type of coping methods that led to their offense in the first place, which we are trying to avoid. So they're already in the community, and I'm not saying you have to bake them cookies. And
this isn't us feeling bad for them necessarily. It's saying as a community, we need to understand that these people are going to be living somewhere, and they're being funneled into these very specific geographical neighborhoods. And if not, if the saturation rule is strictly enforced, then the shelter is the other option. Do we want these guys without housing at all? Does that make you, the community member, feel better to think that they don't have a house and that there's no way to track them? That makes AP&P's job more difficult.
Yeah.
So,
this is how I was thinking about it. And I guess, once upon a time, there was an area that I think you and I were looking at, and we had an idea. This is a kind of a old hotel, or it was a motel, right? That was in downtown Ogden.
Mm-hmm.
And what essentially it was turning out to be was we were, so there was a number of rooms, and we would just say this, you would come there and you would live there, and then we'd also provide your treatment in some of those offices. So it was kind of a one-stop shop for the clients, right?
That's what I thought of.
And I think the reason why we didn't move forward on that was because of the potential for this rule to get in the way. I mean, essentially you're all sitting in different housing units, and you're in kind of like a treatment center, kind of, that you pay rent, like a sober living type thing. But then that would have been 2 per room. I mean, you would have had damn near like 40 in the same area. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I don't know. So
be easier to track them, wouldn't it?
Well, okay. So, then it'd be, and I'd say ones who are, I guess you'd have to be under the assumption that everybody in that building is plotting and scheming, right? And it's just like a cauldron of kind of trying, getting together. You know what I mean? Like you would have to assume that for that, because, and my thought goes to, I would assume most of them are doing relatively well, because if they weren't, the good news, folks, is that there's no more higher level of supervision than on sex offenders in the community from adult probation and parole. And when there's even a whiff of impropriety, they get violated and they get sent back to prison. So if you had all of them sitting there, I would imagine some of them are trying to do well, and they would discourage that kind of crap from being there. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't want it there.
That's I think really something that it's hard to sell to the public without them seeing it, but that's very true. Like, especially dudes that are pretty treatment savvy. Mm-hmm. They like, things are, it's a pretty tight ship if for sex offenders that are on supervision. And at least like during like group therapy and things like that, we see them call each other out all the time, hold each other accountable. And look, like if, and that, I mean, this is anecdotal, but it seems like for whatever reason, out of all the people of different crimes, sex offenders tend to roll over on each other a little more frequently.
Yeah.
You know,
I kind of think that's everybody. Like, I know there's a con code that I would never, ever snitch on my fellow criminal.
You think it's just like kind of a...
Well, there's a second piece to that. I would never, ever snitch on my fellow criminal until the moment it benefited me even a little bit.
That's the part they don't say out loud.
Yeah. Well, and my thing is I just would say, think about a sober living house and how many people could be in there, you know, and why would that be? I mean, I get it. I mean, the when people recidivate on substance use, it's kind of like business as usual. You know, it's not really frowned upon.
It's not front page news.
Well, and it's also not as catastrophic either, right?
Well, not even in the same ballpark.
However, I'm just saying that you know that there's not the same concerns there, and I would say more so, like you're saying, that's very, you know, substance use, especially when you get to that point, it's very, very social. There's a social connectivity there that drives that pretty big, and you're okay with that. Whereas, you know, a lot of sex offenses are kind of lone wolves. You know, they weren't reinforced by a whole lot of people around them, and in fact, they didn't really seek a whole lot of help to get this because out of fear that it would ostracize them from their family and whatnot. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, did they? This goes into a lot of stuff. Doesn't look like they got into any conclusions, right?
Yeah, it's kind of just more pointed out. Is that the end of the article? Right
nah, they get into like a lot of back and forth and saying neighbors are disappointed to hear AP&P's explanation for allowing so many exceptions. Like, again, we want AP&P to be able to have the ability to make decisions based on the evidence specific to the individual. We want that. We want them to have that. That we want therapists to be able to have that. Like carte blanche, one size fits all rules kind of take away from, well, I guess the integrity of what we're trying to do here. We need to be able to make those determinations. Well, and on here, I know it was saying too, they didn't like direct them to go stay there. I mean, it's more so that you have a limited option of places to live. And now it's even worse, you know, and they got to be able to afford those things and be able to get like close to their jobs. Like you know, I personally don't think AP&P makes flippant decisions like that. You know, like, oh, go live wherever you want. You know what I mean? I don't think they do that.
No, they when someone wants to move somewhere, they have to put in an address verification request, and the agent has to look up the location, Google Maps, right? They need to check to see where it is in proximity to certain zoned areas that might not be sex offender friendly, you know, depending on the client, schools, parks, things like that. And then they have to do a walkthrough. They have to go visit the location and sign off on it. And so like it isn't a flippant decision.
Well, you know, and the other thing I was thinking was, okay, so if you're an agent, you have to make a field contact, an unannounced field contact at their residence at least once a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if there's 14 of them there, dude, AP&P is there half the month. Think about that.
That's a really good way of looking at it.
Right?
Yep.
They're there half the month. They're there 15 days a month, you know?
Assuming the PO doesn't just go in and just say, all right, got 80 of you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you get whoever.
Yeah, the increased supervision.
Yeah, I mean, you would have more eyes on this. I mean, again, I just eyeballed that house. I don't know what the square footage is. 14 sounds a little bit much. On the other hand, though, you and I have been part of cases that have been reported in the news. And then I read the article, and I'm like, man, that is wildly inaccurate. So, I mean, it's tough because nobody, like an agent, can't get on here and in the comments section defend themselves. I know everybody else can just get on there and talk crap and say whatever they want. But as a provider or somebody that's tied to it, you can't get on and do anything about it. You can't fill in the context. And it's never updated. Nothing's ever updated and said, oh, this is inaccurate, because it's like little things that really do change that. So I'm also like, I'm always skeptical about the accuracy of news articles because I've been part of them. I'm not going to claim fake news. That's not what I'm saying. I just know that news is only worthy when it's provocative and people want to read it. And if you kind of keep it watered down, the people don't want to read it. So I know they're doing a job, but whatever. So
want to shift gears?
Yeah. Geez, sorry about these coughs. I wish I had a cough button. Dude, if you have a cough and it's that serious, you got to press a button.
Yeah, you got a problem.
It's so
you
weird.
Need a button for that.
So yeah, mine's it's not a two-parter, but it was also sex offender related. But I wanted to open with this. This was some news from the National Institute on Drug Abuse. This kind of sets the stage for this. And the article was Words Matter. And I didn't, by the way, post it here so we can view it because there's a gajillion pop-ups and it looks like crap and I'm not dealing with it. So it says Words Matter. Language can reduce mental health and addiction stigma. NIH leaders say, National Institute of Health. So in a perspective published in Neuropsychopharmacology, look at that word, wow, leaders from the National Institute of Health address how using appropriate language to describe mental illness and addiction can help reduce stigma and improve how people with these conditions are treated in healthcare settings and through society. This is an important line. The authors define stigma as negative attitudes toward people that are based on certain distinguishing characteristics. Negative attitudes toward people that are based on certain distinguishing characteristics. I want to come back to that. More than a decade of research has shown that stigma contributes significantly to negative health outcomes and can pose a barrier to seeking treatment for mental illness or substance use disorders. Now, this is a perspective. This is not a research article. In other words, this is not like statistically proven at this point, right? Now, here's some stats on this. It says 35% of people with serious mental illness in the United States and nearly 90% of people with substance use disorders do not receive treatment. The perspective authors point to the evidence that stigma-related bias among clinicians can contribute to a treatment-averse mindset and to flawed clinical care, including failure to implement proven methods of treatment. Not to beat a dead horse therapy.
Yeah. Some of our listeners didn't like our take.
Oh, yeah. I can't. By the way, sidebar.
Horses make good dog food.
If equine therapy, you can't call it horse therapy. No, we'll call it. If you worked with a horse and it made you feel better, and you feel awesome, I'm so glad. Whatever works, man. Awesome. 100%. I will support you till, all the live long day. I just want, I think I wanted something simple. I want one randomized control trial. One. Okay. Not a meta-analysis. One randomized control trial. Just one, showing a statistically significant outcome using equine therapy.
Did you just give our listeners a homework assignment?
There's your homework assignment. Okay. I will post your contributions if you do that. But yeah, that was about our ineffectiveness as mental health practitioners. Had nothing to do with horses, but man, we got some blowback. So yes, please do horse therapy. By all means, more power to you. No offense intended.
Giddy
by
up.
Any stretch. Yeah, giddy up. Further, when a person with mental illness or substance use disorder continues to experience stigma, they may begin to internalize it. This self-stigma can lead to lower self-esteem and feelings of self-worth and can become an ongoing source of distress that may exacerbate symptoms and create barriers to successful treatment. Conversely, efforts to reduce stigma may reduce the psychological burden it places on individuals and can be an important component of removing barriers to care. The authors highlight numerous studies showing that using scientifically accurate language and terms that centralize the experience of the patients with mental illness and substance use disorders is one key component in reducing stigma. They argue that a shift in language is crucial for mobilizing resources toward mental health and addiction services and eroding prejudices that keep people who need those services from seeking or receiving them. Though stigma is difficult to eliminate, they contend that changing the language we use to describe these conditions can make significant and immediate difference for people experiencing them. So here's my thing. Going back to that first thing there. So stigma, these are attitudes from people about characteristics about the people. It has nothing to do with the words. right? Like the words are the words. It's not like the word itself somehow did a laser pointer into our head and somehow transmuted the attitudes into our heads just because it was a word. The word is just a word that we have attached negative attitudes about characteristics to. So
you'd have to change the attitude, not the word, in order to change the stigma.
Well, right. So they're suggesting changing changing the language and to be more accurate. But I mean, even in here, going from, there's language in there that they used to say addict or addiction. They no longer use that. It's now substance use disorder, right? They've gone, and even now when they go from, it's kind of fascinating. They use the word mental illness, that term, because mental health disorder is what they kind of, mental health sounds good. I want to have mental health. I like mental health, but mental health disorder is what they've changed that to rather than mental illness. So I don't know. I think though that so if you just change words, does that just kind of kick the can down the road? I mean, are you not just waiting for a new word to now become stigmatized? Because are we under the impression that if you just change a word, somehow attitudes shift along with it?
I'm of two minds about this. There's a reason that when I'm working with a client one-on-one, that like to their face when I'm talking to them, I don't call them a sex offender. I'll talk about their offense, but I'll try to keep from saying like, you're a sex offender, it doesn't change any of the approach I have, still hold them fully accountable. But I think when it comes to the way that the clients think about themselves, that there's some level of importance here. And here's what I'm saying. I'm pretty confident I know the direction you're going with this, but I kind of want to make the devil's advocate case here as far as how words matter in terms of like treatment approach. So let's go with the word sex offender.
Yeah.
In our field, I think that so like kind of common language is rather than calling somebody a sex offender, you call them a person that is sexually offended. And the idea, of course, is that you're acknowledging that they're a person that engaged in a behavior and that they aren't the sum total of their parts, that like they themselves aren't defined by the worst moment of their lives. And so for like clients, it can be maybe destigmatizing to drop that label. And here's the thing, I'm not fully on board with it. What I tell clients is, a farmer farms, a banker banks, a baker bakes, a sex offender sexually offends. It describes like kind of a present tense in the moment. This is something I engage in. The makes it a thing that we do. And so I'll say you have to, you're a sex offender until you can show substantial evidence that you now live a life mutually exclusive of sexually offending, that you have changed demonstrably the way that you think and act, such that if someone were to compare you at the time of your offense with the person sitting before me today, they'll be able to point to distinct differences that have held up over time. Once you've done that, then the sex offender can become past tense and you're a person that once committed a sex offense. And so it's kind of like I want clients to earn it in a way, not just adopt it to feel good about themselves. I want them to draw a distinction behaviorally, measurably between maybe using risk level based on who they were then, on how they act and how they are now. That's where I'd push back on what you're saying. But if I'm understanding your point, you're saying that if like people have an attitude towards people that commit a sex offense. So whether we call them sex offenders, people that have committed a sex offense, someone that once engaged in sexually abusive behaviors, but no longer engages in sexually abusive behaviors because now they're doing really good things like that. like what?
Yeah. Why is there always more syllables?
Oh, dude. Yeah. Right.
If you go the other direction, you're going to have more success with this.
Make it really pithy.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're saying that no matter what we change it to, there's going to be a stigma against that behavior, and so it's just going to be there's going to be they're not going to shed the stigma. It's just the words are going to be different.
Yes,
right.
Two things I think about. Yes. You. I mean, however, my counter to that is you kind of already alluded to it with Baker, Farmer, and so on and so forth. Okay, so would a soccer player ever want to be called a person who plays soccer?
I guess maybe.
Would they ever want that? Or would they want to be called a soccer player?
Well, I don't know, man. I
guess we don't know soccer players.
Yeah. I mean, does Lionel Messi identify himself as a soccer player or a retired soccer player?
Or, well, I mean,
is he retired?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't watch soccer.
Yeah.
Or a football player. I mean, so a person who plays football. Like if somebody said, "Hey, he's a football player." Hey, a person who plays football.
Is O.J. Simpson a football player?
No. Oh. Now, thank you for that segue, by the way. Okay. Have we ever heard the push to distance ourselves from the stigma associated with murderer or serial killer? You ever heard a push to go in the other direction?
No.
Of course you haven't. There's value in stigma, okay? And stigma has, in my opinion, I mean, if you are stigmatized and you don't like being that's good motive. Nobody's ever going to say we shouldn't call them serial killers. We should call them persons who have previously engaged in homicidal behaviors towards.
Oh, I mean, when you put it that way, it makes it so much more ridiculous. That's a good point.
Well, yeah, we haven't. So
I'm not a murderer. I'm someone that once murdered. Get it right.
Yeah. I'm someone who is engaged in homicidal behavior. Yeah. That is.
That's true.
Okay. So what I'm saying is like number one is, okay. When it comes to treatment of sex, now look, when it comes to like substance use and sex offenders, the reason why I think there's a push there is because there's misunderstandings about this population that everybody needs to start, coming to grips with.
Okay.
Substance use disorder. I mean, it's a neurobehavioral disorder. This is a disease, and it's pretty medically proven at this point, and yeah, I get it. They got them there, but a lot of people got themselves into diabetes too. We don't not call that a disease.
Point. Exactly.
Okay?
Great.
A lot of people ate themselves into obesity,
heart
disease too.
Cancer.
Okay. We don't.
Well,
it's called heart disease, right? Like we don't not call it something else just because of behaviors that led to it.
Sure.
I understand it's you don't like the behaviors that led to it. Neither do I. I don't necessarily agree with them.
A lot of addicts don't like it either.
Right. But they're at that level where the thinking mechanism in their brain is not functioning at full clip, and they need some treatment for that. Okay. And it's a neurobehavioral disorder. So there's a lot of sophisticated ways of treating that. It's not just a pill or going on a diet or anything like that.
Willpower.
Right. There's a lot of behavioral stuff that goes into this. Okay. And I think with sex offense, the landscape of sex offenders is changed, and people are realizing, well, not all of them are pedophiles and looking to rape kids. And there's a lot of reasons that these sex offenses happen, not justifying them. I'm saying that the events that led to this are very different for everybody, and the rehabilitation is very important too. All of us have a stake in this not happening again. And so those two get, rightly so, some I think it's like people are just asking for some grace for that population. However, I don't know if changing language helps that. Okay. Because here's an article that might support that. And because I think when you start changing language, it's so superficial that people are not dumb. They don't just be like, oh yeah, well, okay.
Kind of talking about maps too.
What do you mean?
Minor attracted people.
Yeah. I mean, like minor attracted people, and then you turn it into maps, and it's almost like, what are you talking about? Pedophiles? Is that what you're talking about? You know what I mean? And people get angry because you're trying. It feels like you're being tricked almost, right? Here's what this was the article that I pulled this up. The original one was Colorado board reverses controversial change to sex offender label at urging of Governor Jared Polis and his appointee. In November, the state sex offender management board voted to replace sex offenders with adults who commit sexual offenses. So maybe they're just like me and they don't like more syllables, but who knows? Then the board opened that decision up to a public comment, and that's where things went off track. Under pressure from the governor and the state's public safety director, Colorado Sex Offender Management Board has reversed its controversial November decision to scrap the term sex offenders in its own guiding principles in favor of adults who commit sexual offenses. So, I mean, and they said they tabled it, but they're probably not going to turn it over anytime soon. And you know, the outcry from this was a lot of people, and this was, you know, one of the sexual assault survivors said the coddling from some of the offender-affiliated representatives was repugnant, meaning that this was
the coddling of...
This was a Colorado sexual assault survivor and motivational speaker. The coddling from some of the offender-affiliated representatives was repugnant.
Got it.
Okay, so... I mean, I guess the point here is that they're changing the language, and you know the stigma is there. I don't even think the stigma goes away just because you change the language. Like you hear words that are just, you know, more.
So can both things be true? Maybe that's why I say I'm of two minds about this. Like, no, it doesn't decrease the stigma at all. If anything, it breeds resentment because, like you're saying, people feel like they're being tricked or like it's being minimized somehow.
Right.
So in that sense, no. As far as like broad view, doesn't do much to impact stigma. Might even enhance it. But for the client that's actively grappling with the worst decision they've ever made, presumably, and you know our efforts at helping them like who they are today and compare and contrast that with who they were then, so as to not get bogged down by shame even when they're living right today. I think that could be a useful way to think about things for themselves as a tool to, again, grapple with the circumstances around their offense.
Right. Don't disagree with that, but that's more for a therapeutic conversation than we're going to change the language and magically everything's going to be different. Because on this was a quote, and this was from, this was on December 16th, the day before the board's reversal vote. Democratic Governor Jared Polis sent a letter to Kimberly Klein, the chair of SOMB. We must be wary not to normalize violent acts of sexual aggression or even give the appearance of normalizing such unacceptable behavior, he wrote. I hope that the board will reevaluate its previous decision to allow for additional discussions with the wider community, including carefully examining potential trauma victims and ensuring that a clear message continues to be sent to the general public that non-consensual sexual aggression is not acceptable or tolerated in Colorado. So when you say minor attracted people, right, which is a term that we've heard and everything, you know, I think, you know, somebody who look at this and says, wait, are you talking about pedophiles? Is that what you're talking about? And they have, you know, for whatever reason, a really strong negative opinion about that population. Like, that's what I'm saying. You would, like you said, it's going to breed resentment because now you're trying to take something and turn it into something else, and it's almost going to drive it even more. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm two things. Use less syllables.
Right.
Brevity is the idea, but also I think need to do better about educating people in general. Okay. And like I said to clients, I don't know, you can't make a case for this to the general public. There's no way to accomplish this. I just don't know how you accomplish this.
People don't even want to hear it, dude.
But you can change individual hearts and minds in your life, and people getting to know you as far as the changes that you're making. And then they learn, oh, wait, you have a sex offense on your record. And, you know, and it says, oh, I don't think of you that way. Okay. Now I have changed the stigma because you're no longer thinking of this because you value me as a person and the characteristics. Remember, they said it. I didn't. This is about attitudes, about characteristics. well, if my attitude about this characteristics about this individual who I got to know is that he's a good person and, you know, he's a law-abiding citizen, so on and so forth, and then I later learn that he has a sex offense on his record, okay, well, I get to now decide how I'm going to define this person.
We hear that frequently from our clients that they've had that experience.
Right. And unfortunately, for our clients, one of the things I say is, look, you've made a decision that unfortunately puts you in this place that people get to have opinions about you. And we can't really do a whole lot to change mass opinions, but individuals' opinions, you can make a lot of work on that. And really, overall, I don't know, do the mass opinions about anything really matter? You know, like about this? I mean, if people in my life, important people in my life, my PO, my loved ones, my boss, those are the people who matter. I need to not have a stigma around them. Like some stranger in Alabama, what do I care? They think about me.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know.
That's a healthy way of looking at it.
Yeah. I just say, try not to kick I don't know, the stigma stuff. I think there's some value in stigma, and rather than running away from it. It's a fair
point, man.
Yeah. Hopefully we don't start getting away from serial killer. I don't know what you'd turn that into.
If any of the listeners have any ideas, we want to hear what. We want you to politically correct up serial killer.
Nobody wants to destigmatize that. They like it. They're like, yeah, that should be stigmatized. I agree. Like, you know, no. So anyway, well, should that about do it for this? Yeah, that's a couple of cool. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we solved anything, but hey, at least
we brought the news to you, listeners.
Yeah. Okay. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Okay. We'll see you guys next time.